Please join me in welcoming Leif.
Thanks, everyone, and good morning. It's good to be in Westman. I'm here today to talk a little bit. I named my presentation Connecting Cereals to Global Markets, and really what I want to share with you today is the context around how Canadian cereals are sold throughout the world and the way that Cereals Canada really works to bring those connections. And I'd like to thank the organizers. I think my remarks will pick up from where Dr. Lee left off in his presentation. It's very true, and I've probably, the concept of Canada's reliance on exports is something that we've heard a lot about in 2025, and I expect these numbers will change a little bit from year to year and from presentation to presentation that you might see, but really, Canada is extremely export dependent. With canola, both the seed and the processed products is extremely reliant on export markets. Pulses as well go into so many different countries, and cereals to a large extent are the same. When we look at the cereal crops in particular, we can see that for wheat and durum, that such a high proportion is exported. A lot of that high quality is really well suited for food. For barley and oats, that proportion is less, as we use a lot more of that domestically here in Canada for feed. And we're to be successful in doing that, we need to have access to a lot of markets. And as you can see, that we're about 80 different markets when you add all of the cereal crops together, although the proportion to different markets is quite different from crop to crop, as I'll explain. And when it comes to exports, Cereals Canada is a really a key player here. We represent the value chain going back in these cereal crops. So our membership includes life science companies, but our two main pillars are definitely the farm organizations like the Manitoba Crop Alliance, as well as the exporters who are actually moving that grain and have also direct relationships with international buyers. But with Cereals Canada and our focus on processing and quality, our membership also includes Canadian processors and even some processors from outside of Canada. And what we're really trying to do is promote cereals and make sure that the value chain is successful and that is providing an economic return to keep things strong here in Canada. Our board of directors has identified these three strategic pillars, and in my role in the markets and trade side, strengthening our competitive position in global markets is really where my focus is first and foremost. When I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan, as Ashley said, and there was wheat all around, and I talked about wheat as being the breadbasket of Canada, and it wasn't until later on that I sort of had a more of a high-level view and see that Canada's, in terms of some of the other countries, is a small producer of wheat. China, EU, India, they're growing a lot of winter wheat varieties with really high yields. In Canada, of course, we're focused much more on durum and hard red spring wheat, quality first. And I think that's made sense for us. And the fact that we do grow so much means that we take that 3% of global production and we represent about 12% of what's going on in global wheat trade. So we're taking our wheat and making a big difference in the world. As well, wheat isn't wheat. The wheat that they grow in southern Ontario, soft red winter varieties, isn't going to make good pan bread the way that the wheat we grow in Manitoba and Saskatchewan is. So there's different segments within the wheat markets, and hard red spring wheat and durum wheat, Canada is really a leader. And as well, we're successful because we have been very effective at keeping a large set of diversified markets. And the nature of a lot of our wheat, like the CWRS varieties, can be used to make a lot of different end products. And what this has meant is that Canadian wheat is in a lot of markets, and a lot of markets all around the world. I guess first of all, I'd like to say that Canada is our own biggest customer. We mill about 3 million metric tons of wheat for use here every year. That's bigger than any of our export markets. But we do need to export a lot. Asia is probably the most important region, representing about 50% of our wheat exports. China, Indonesia, Japan, Bangladesh are markets where they have large growing populations. Economic progress in a market like Indonesia has meant a growing middle class. More people are living in cities, and they're moving away from rice-based products into wheat-based products. This is good for Canadian demand, and it's good for Indonesia that we can supply them. Latin America has been a very important growth market for Canada over the past 10, 15 years. Peru, Colombia, Ecuador have really increased their reliance on Canadian wheat, sometimes and have used that more and more in their grists, displacing sometimes, in some cases, U.S. wheat. But when there's a trade talk around Ecuador, some people are maybe unsure why Ecuador is important. Well, it's certainly important to the Canadian wheat producers because that's a market, and Indonesia as well. These are two markets where ag products are probably some of the most high-value trade between Canada and these countries. I see a market like Indonesia, and I think of Canadian agriculture as leading the way. But we're in Europe with the United Kingdom and Italy being big purchasers, and there was even a couple years when Australia had a drought where they imported Canadian wheat. So I think someone ate a loaf of bread made with Canadian wheat in Antarctica at some point. So I'm going to say that Canadian wheat is in every continent in the globe. For durum wheat, Canada's a very big deal. We're the largest single country producer, surpassing Italy most years for durum wheat production. And with with us producing much more durum than we need domestically, that means we're exporting a lot. So Canada makes up more than half of world durum wheat trade. And with that means that Canadian wheat is also going to be in all of the durum consuming markets around the world. The biggest ones are all around the Mediterranean basin, with as you may suspect, Italy being one of the largest consumers because of their large pasta sector. In Morocco and Algeria, though, the durum wheat isn't typically made into pasta. Instead, it's made into couscous. And that's a real staple food for these countries. And Canada has dominated the market share in these two large durum wheat users. Even in the United States, where they also grow durum wheat, both in the northern plains as well as in the South Desert durum, they're still buying Canadian durum, blending it to make the pasta that we eat in North America. So the functional quality, the bright yellow color of Canadian durum is really well regarded abroad as well as in North America. In markets like Japan and elsewhere in Europe, Canadian durum is often used to make premium noodles and premium pasta. Even in a market like Nigeria, what they're doing is buying durum wheat and maybe blending it with common wheat to make more affordable pasta blends there. But again, things like our color really set us apart. I think Dr. Lee did a great job of talking about Canada's barley trade. For oats, Canada is of course, a very significant producer, as is Russia and the EU. A lot of the oats grown in the European Union are traded within the European Union, so they don't get caught in some of these trade stats. But for trade outside of the EU, Canada, as you can see, is again a really significant player. Although when you contrast what's happening with oats with what's happening with durum and wheat, you can see that the market makeup that we've got for oats is a lot different. We're heavily reliant on the United States, and it's been a great success story, the Manitoba oats going down to be maybe processed by General Mills into Cheerios. Really a powerful story about how Canadian ingredients help the U.S. economy, and therefore is important in the current trade environment. But it does also highlight that market diversification in oats is something that we'll have to continue to prioritize on. So I'd like to take some time to now talk about, having set the stage for where the cereals are going, I do want to take some time to talk about the work that Cereals Canada does and how it adds value to the value chain and how it supports these markets that I've identified. And if I do good with my time, we'll have time to take questions and speak about anything that's on your mind as well. For me and the work that we do at Cereals Canada, and I think for the value chain, first and foremost is making sure that we have market access. As much as there's been a lot of talk about tariffs, if you don't have the legal or technical ability to import your grain into a country, then you're nowhere. And this, therefore, is a top priority for Cereals Canada, and I think for farmers and everyone involved. With what we've seen over the past 5 years, up until last year, the main type of market access barrier that we really experienced is what we would call a non-tariff barrier. These are often regulatory issues. For example, in Vietnam, back in I think 2018, the regulators there said that if Canadian grain shipments had thistle seeds in it, that they would reject it. So thistle seeds, you can clean it out, but you can never clean it out to zero. And as a result of this regulation that was put on in Vietnam, we went from sales some years in the 200,000-300,000 metric tons, one year almost 1 million metric tons, down to about 20,000 tons. So the impact of that non-tariff barrier was huge, and Vietnam is a really important potential market because, again, it's got these characteristics where you've got a growing population, you've got a growing middle class, and you've got urbanization. This Vietnam is a great opportunity to grow Canadian demand, but you can't if there's a barrier that's keeping the grain out. So this is where Cereals Canada brings together coalitions, including groups like the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, who is, as our regulator, plays an important role talking with the Vietnamese regulators. We're working with our customers to make sure that they're able to communicate why they want Canadian, why it's good for Vietnam to import Canadian grain. Bringing that all together and putting pressure is the way that we push back on these non-tariff barriers, and at the end of 2024, we had those restrictions removed, and Canadian exports to Vietnam have increased significantly back, so now that we're back in the multi-100,000 tons of exports. Indonesia, you saw, was our second biggest export market. They were making regulatory changes there, and the concern was that there was going to be extra rules about fumigation, perhaps also restrictions on certain weed seeds, things that could either increase the cost of Canadian grain or keep us out altogether. So for our second largest market, we were very concerned. In this case, we again worked with partners as well as using our own members' money to make sure that we're communicating with the Indonesian regulators. We brought them to Manitoba. We want to show them what a Canadian farm looks like and your ability to manage quality. They've never seen a Canadian farm. They're looking at agriculture in Indonesia is very different with low capitalization and different crops. So bringing them to see the way that our cold air works, the way that farmers are controlling the quality in the bins, the way that the quality is protected through the handling system and out through the Port of Vancouver, that engagement provided them with a lot of information that they were able to take back. And as a result of that, we were able to come to an import protocol that really maintained the status quo, which allows them to get safe Canadian grain at an affordable price. Sometimes we're working on supporting trade agreements. I mentioned Ecuador as an important trade agreement for Canada. We're now, the government is talking about making agreements with the United Arab Emirates. That's very positive. They're a big buyer of Canadian wheat and a big promoter of it within the Gulf region. Typically, Cereals Canada is quite supportive, and I think the whole industry should be of promoting trade, particularly when we're looking for trade agreements that give us tariff-free access and put science-based rules on regulations. I'll say it many times, good regulations result in good trade. Dr. Lee talked about the work that the CMBTC does in engaging with customers on a technical level, and I also think that this is extremely important, and it really fits with the brand that Canada's putting forward, which is about quality, reliability, and consistency. So when we're doing a global engagement, you've got grain traders who are talking to grain traders in other countries and doing deals. But there's more to promoting quality than just talking about price, and part of that is talking about the quality and the technical aspects. These are helpful in a number of ways, I think. One is by identifying that value and of why Canadian grain is worth more, you increase customers' willingness to pay for it. But you're also building relationships. One of the precursor organizations to Cereals Canada was the Canadian International Grains Institute, or CIGI. The work being done there is over 50 years, has been going on for over 50 years. When we're meeting customers in other countries, there's folks that have worked their whole career as a miller in Indonesia, let's say. They know Canadians in a very friendly way. That makes it a lot easier to bring that customer alongside to lobby for why we need a good trade agreement with Indonesia. It also means that they're more likely to promote Canadian wheat to their buying groups. And lastly, they become used to it. They know the way Canadian performs. They know how it works in their mills that may be grinding 20,000 metric tons a day. These types of relationships build long-term value and long-term relationships. And we want to keep investing in that. This picture in the bottom right is a way that we offer programming in Africa. Again, a market that offers a lot of growth potential. What we're doing is we're going in there. We have a partnership with a facility in Kenya that brings young millers in so that they get to work firsthand with Canadian wheat, understand how to get the most of it. Then they can take that message back to the individual companies and mills that they work with across the continent, and we know that they've got the best information and hopefully will become advocates over time for Canadian wheat. You see the testimonial from a miller in Mexico, and this is another great example of where we're able to bring people to Canada, demonstrate how we do quality assurance, and how it fits with what they need for their own mills. I think that as well as going out, we do bring a lot of people into our facilities in Winnipeg. We need to be able to demonstrate to them that we speak their language. So in our facility in Winnipeg, we have a pilot mill, basically using the same equipment they would use in their commercial mills. We have a pilot bakery. We can reproduce pretty much any end product around the world, from chapatis to alkaline noodles to pan breads to hearth breads. We can do that all. We have a similar capacity in the Durham space, and we're working to grow our capacity in oats and barley as we move forward as well. We've been promoting the vision for an infrastructure refresh known as the GATE project, and I mean there's a lot of the talk and the picture is about a building, but I just want to emphasize that what really matters about this project is what happens inside the building. Going back to photos like this is what GATE is really about. It's about providing a space where we have the technical facilities to bring people in, to demonstrate the value of Canadian wheat, durum, oats, and barley, and to get that value from the demand impacts and from those long-term relationships. The facility is out of date, and it's in an office tower that has problems with water leaks, and that we're going to get kicked out of as the lease expires in a couple of years. So I want to, this is both a matter of necessity, but also a really strong investment, in my opinion, for Canadian cereals. When we're exporting over 20 million tons of wheat, over 5 million tons of durum, and multi-million tons of barley and oats, a small impact per ton from the work that we do at Cereals Canada provides a huge ROI for this industry. We just got back at the end of December 2025 from our new crop and technical outreach. This is also another important role that Cereals Canada plays, which is pulling together samples that will represent the grain that's going to be loaded on Canadian export vessels, doing the technical analysis to understand what the quality parameters are for each crop year, and going out and meeting our customers in their home turf to tell them the story about the quality, to talk to them about quality, and also talk to them about any other trade issues. This year we engaged with almost 30 countries, which represented about 8.2 billion tons, $1 billion rather, of Canadian exports. And this is a really key engagement that we undertake every year, and it's something that's really valued by our customers. Again, my experience is that you can always do video calls, and we do that, and we do webinars to deliver things cost effectively, but it really shows respect when you're able to travel to their mills in Nigeria or in Indonesia, to talk to them in their own facilities, and demonstrate our commitment to that relationship. The last thing that Cereals Canada is really taking the lead on is bringing back those messages from our customers. Because so much of our staff are technical experts themselves, that means when they're having conversations with millers, they're understanding what the millers are really valuing when it comes to specific quality attributes. What about test weight? What about protein? What about extensibility? Our technical team is having those discussions, which allows us to bring that advice back when we're talking with Canadian wheat breeders and Canadian industries at forums like the PGDC. It's also the basis of Keep It Clean and the advice that we're communicating to farmers, because when we're hearing information from our customers, if they're particularly concerned about a certain residue from a crop protection product, we need to know about that, and then we take that back, have a discussion with industry, and give the resulting advice through Keep It Clean. So again, the title of my presentation was Connecting Cereals to Global Markets, and I hope that I've shared a little bit about what those global markets are and some of the ways that those connections are made and why they matter to Canada. I'm certainly happy to take any questions that folks may have.
Are there any questions?
I've come across the technology that would allow wheat and other crops to fix their own nitrogen, but it's a GMO type of transformation. I would think it would be much easier to do that in canola because it's already GMO, but what impact or what steps would you suggest if we want to do that in wheat, or is it even possible?
From what I know about bringing forward a new wheat variety is that it needs to do well agronomically, and it sounds like with the nitrogen fixing it would do that. A variety needs to be resistant to disease to ensure that it's going to be good for farmers as well as keep the grain clean through the system. And lastly, the wheat will need to be analyzed in terms of what does it mean for its quality. Is it more of a bread wheat, more of a cracker wheat, or something different? So those are three important factors. But GMOs, we sort of live in a world where genetically modification has seen huge production impacts, favorable production impacts, and there are a lot of our Canadian customers that don't care about whether it's genetically modified or not. They're looking to get food at an affordable price, but at the same time, there are a lot of other markets that are extremely sensitive to genetically modified crops, and some of those markets are some of the most high value. So right now there are no GM wheat varieties being grown in Canada. That does provide us a marketing advantage. So I think that if a GM wheat was to be registered in Canada, there would need to be discussions to understand what those impacts are and what the potential impacts are and to mitigate against them. It remains a tricky subject.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? I actually had one.
Yeah.
I think the story about the thistle seed issue in Vietnam is really fascinating. As an agronomist, thistles are a challenge, but they're a pervasive challenge. It's never going to be zero. So can you talk a little bit more about how that issue played out and how it came to be resolved?
Yeah, I'd like to. This started with sort of an unexpected. A lot of non-tariff barriers sort of come out of the blue, and this was the case in Vietnam as well, where they had started. Some cargoes had been flagged by their regulators as containing thistle seeds. So the argument that Vietnam was making is that the importation of thistle seeds is a risk to their ecology. That the thistles, I think the thought would be that if the thistles take hold in Vietnam, then it's a pest for them, and they as the regulators in Vietnam have the right to stop that pest from coming in. But at the same time, thistle seeds are prevalent across the northern hemisphere. In other exporting countries would have them, and Canada had been exporting wheat to Vietnam for decades without issue. So I guess we were concerned about the scientific basis for that claim. But there are rules about putting in regulations, and Canada needed to follow those. So really, this is an important role of the CFIA. There's a group within the CFIA called the International Affairs Branch, whose staff are really focused on helping us engage with regulators from other countries. And they started the work to put together a package describing the nature of thistles, talking about all the ways that we try to control it, and emphasizing that the amount of thistle seeds in our shipments are very, very small. But there's also elements of politics and economics, and sometimes customers are not, or regulators aren't ready to have that discussion, and that was the case in Vietnam, where really they were unwilling to engage. But at the same time, talking to millers in Vietnam, they wanted Canadian wheat. They felt the impacts of not having access to it. And I also believe that one of the most important ways to get non-tariff barriers removed is to have people within that country advocating for the removal. So I think that this is where Cereals Canada can come in, and as well as our exporters, to work with customers to make sure that they understand that they can help this process. Ultimately, it all happened quite quickly, where the Vietnamese regulators were willing to engage. Customers were supportive, and the regulations were walked back quite quickly at the end of 2024, and the market rebound happened quite after. So I think my message is it does take a group, it takes industry, it takes regulators in both countries, and sometimes nothing will happen, and then it happens. So the message for me is when we see a non-tariff barrier, we got to keep chipping away at it.
Thank you very much. We're at the end of our time for this session, but please join me in thanking Leif for sharing such great information.